Before you judge me for taking him back, just hear the whole story. My name is Ava. I'm 31 years old, and I thought forgiveness could save us. Let's just call him Daniel. We met at a time when I'd already sworn off love. My last relationship had ended in a storm of lies and distance, and I promised myself I'd never give someone the power to break me like that again. But Daniel, he felt different. He was attentive, patient. The kind of man who texted good morning without fail, remembered my coffee order, and actually listened when I spoke. For the first time in years, I let my guard down. And then, 6 months ago, I found out he'd cheated. I'll spare you the cinematic discovery. No lipstick on a collar, no screaming in the rain. Just a quiet, gut-wrenching confirmation from a mutual friend, and then the truth spilling out of him when I confronted him. He cried. He begged. He told me it was meaningless, a stupid mistake that didn't reflect how he really felt about me. He said he'd been under stress, that he didn't even know why he did it, that it had nothing to do with me. And I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him so badly that I convinced myself forgiveness was strength. We agreed to try again, not blindly, but with rules and work put in place. Therapy sessions, weekly date nights, honest check-ins. I told myself people could change. That one bad chapter didn't erase an entire book. The first few weeks felt hopeful. He was more attentive, more present. The way he looked at me, the way he touched me, it felt like he was trying. And I was trying too. Every time the old doubts crept in, I forced myself to push them aside. But here's the thing about cracks in trust. Once they're there, you can't stop looking for them. One night, about 3 months into our fresh start, I was on the couch scrolling through Netflix while he was in the shower. His phone lit up next to me. I wasn't snooping. I didn't even touch it. But the preview of the message glowed right there on the lock screen. Just a single line. I miss you too. Can't stop thinking about that night. I swear my heart stopped. The rational part of me whispered, don't jump to conclusions. You don't even know who it's from. But the part of me that had already lived through betrayal knew exactly what that kind of message meant. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen until it went dark again. When he came back into the room, towel around his waist, laughing about something he'd seen on TikTok, I didn't say a word. My throat was tight, my stomach twisted. And just like that, all the hope I'd been nursing for months felt fragile again, ready to shatter. I didn't have proof. Not yet. And maybe I wasn't ready to go looking for it. Because deep down, I already knew that if I found it, I couldn't unsee it. I thought I'd given us a second chance. I didn't know I'd given him time to choose. After my divorce, I didn't think I'd ever let anyone close to me again. My ex-husband wasn't the kind of man who screamed or threw things. His control was quieter, sharper. He chipped away at me with constant criticism, disguised as concern. Every choice I made, from what I wore to who I spoke to, came with a lecture. By the end, I didn't recognize myself. So, when it finally ended, I promised myself 2 things. I'd never ignore red flags again. I'd never give a man the kind of power to rewrite my reality. Then I met Daniel. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. And that's exactly why I let my guard down. He wasn't flashy or overly charming. He was steady, safe, the kind of man who asked if I'd eaten before asking anything else. He listened without trying to solve my problems. He never made me feel like I was too much or too emotional. For the first time in years, I could breathe. So when I caught him cheating the first time, and he cried, begged, swore it was meaningless, I convinced myself this wasn't my ex all over again. This wasn't control. This was a man who made a mistake, who was willing to fix it. And maybe, if I gave him that chance, it would prove to me that I wasn't broken, that I could still trust. We started over. Therapy sessions, dinner dates, checking in on each other's days. And for a while, I believed we were building something better. Then came the first fracture. It was subtle. A shift in tone, a delay in his replies. "I'll call you after work," he'd say. And then nothing until the next morning. Plans we'd made weeks in advance suddenly got canceled because of last-minute work emergencies. When I'd ask if everything was okay, he'd sigh, roll his eyes, and mutter, "I'm just busy, Ava. Not everything is about you." One Friday night, after he bailed on dinner for the third time that month, I finally confronted him. "Daniel, this isn't what we agreed to. You promised we'd be open. You promised we'd put in the work." He leaned back, folded his arms, and smirked in that way people do when they've already decided you're wrong. "You're just waiting for me to mess up again. You're looking for things to be mad about." The way he said it, calm, almost bored, made me question myself instantly. Maybe I was too quick to assume. Maybe I was projecting my past onto him. Maybe I was still stuck in the mindset my ex left me with, that relationships could collapse overnight, and that every small change was a warning sign. So, I swallowed it. I told myself Daniel was right, that I needed to stop expecting the worst and start believing in the man who'd promised to rebuild with me. For the next week, I bit my tongue. I didn't push when his messages got shorter. I didn't ask who he was with when he said he'd be home late. I gave him space, thinking that's what trust looked like. But trust isn't silence. One night, around midnight, I woke up to the faint glow of his phone. He was lying next to me, angled slightly away, thumbs moving fast over the screen. I caught a reflection in the mirror across the room. Not the words, but the way he tilted the phone just enough to keep me from seeing. When he noticed I was awake, he locked the screen without looking at me. "Couldn't sleep," he said, pretending to yawn. I didn't say a word, but in that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't about the cheating anymore. I realized I hadn't forgiven him for that. What I'd forgiven, and what I was about to relive, was the lying. And this time, I wasn't sure I'd survive it twice. The morning after I caught him texting in the dark, I told myself not to overreact, not to start a fight before I had proof. But my silence didn't go unnoticed. Daniel felt the shift. And instead of meeting me in the middle, he twisted it to his advantage. "This is exactly what I was talking about," he said one night over dinner, setting his fork down like the conversation was already exhausting him. "This is why people don't give second chances. You can't let go. You say you've forgiven me, but every time I'm 5 minutes late or look at my phone, you make it into something." It wasn't an outburst. It was calm, measured. That's what made it land so hard. I wanted to argue, to tell him that trust isn't built in a week, that it takes time, that his late nights and hidden screens weren't helping. But the way he looked at me, like I was proof of my own irrationality, made the words stick in my throat. And then came the chorus of well-meaning friends. "You took him back, Ava. You have to move forward now. Don't sabotage something you fought to keep. If it was just one mistake, don't let it define everything." They weren't in the room when he lied. They weren't there when I watched him protect a text thread like it was gold. But their voices joined his in my head until it was hard to tell where my own instincts ended and their advice began. So I adjusted. I deleted her, the woman he cheated with, from my socials. I stopped following anyone who might post about her just so I wouldn't stumble across her name and have my stomach drop all over again. I stopped asking where he was when he was running late. I told myself that trust meant not checking up, that forgiveness meant not bringing it up again, that being the bigger person meant swallowing the lump in my throat every time my gut whispered, "Something's off." Slowly my world started shrinking. I stopped going out with certain friends, the ones who'd been there the night I found out, who still looked at him with thinly veiled contempt. I didn't want the tension, didn't want to answer their questions. I cut back on my hobbies, my own social life, because it always led to the same fights. "Why are you out so late?" he'd ask when I stayed for one more drink. "You can't expect me to check in constantly," he'd snap if I so much as texted to see when he was coming home. The less I spoke, the less there was for him to push back on. The less I asked, the less he could accuse me of being paranoid. It was a slow suffocation, not the kind you notice all at once, but the kind that steals your air in small, quiet increments until you forget what breathing normally feels like. Every time I felt doubt rise in my chest, I heard his voice in my head. "This is why people don't give second chances." And after a while, I started wondering if he was right. Maybe I really was the problem. Or maybe he was making sure I thought I was. It's strange how the past doesn't just stay behind you. It waits, lurks. And when it senses you're ready to look it in the eye, it slips right back in. Same shape, same shadow. One Tuesday night, Daniel texted, "Working late. Don't wait up." And I swear to God it was like deja vu, because that's exactly what he used to say before the first time I caught him cheating. Same vague tone, same lack of detail. Back then, I'd told myself I was overthinking it, that just because my ex-husband had been controlling didn't mean Daniel was hiding something, that just because my stomach knotted didn't mean my world was about to cave in. But this time, that same knot tightened, and I couldn't pretend I didn't recognize it. I'd seen these signs before. The late nights that weren't explained. The plans that just came up with no names, no specifics. The way his phone stayed face down on the table, or in his pocket, even when it buzzed. And then there was the distance. Not physical at first, but emotional. How he stopped asking about my day. How we became I in every sentence. My brain wanted to believe the second chance was working. The couples therapy, the apologies, the promises meant something. But my body remembered the last time my gut screamed at me, and my body was screaming again. Before you judge me, understand this. I wasn't paranoid. I was experienced. I knew what betrayal smelled like. The faint cologne that wasn't mine, the sudden protectiveness over a phone, the too quick shower when he got home. And as those little moments stacked up, I started seeing the first betrayal play out all over again, beat for beat. Only this time, I wasn't naive enough to think love could stop it. One night, he came home later than usual. Said traffic was bad, no hug, no kiss. Just straight to the fridge for a beer, and then to the couch. I sat across from him, watching his eyes flicker to his phone every time it lit up. He didn't notice me noticing. It hit me then. The second chance wasn't healing us. It was just giving him new ways to hide, new excuses to sharpen. The first time, the lies had been clumsy, obvious in hindsight. Now they were smoother, practiced, like he'd been rehearsing them, fine-tuning the performance for a more skeptical audience. And the scariest part? I realized I was no longer afraid of losing him. I was afraid of how much I already didn't trust him. The second chance wasn't rebuilding us. It was hiding the truth. There's a point in betrayal where the screaming stops. Not out loud, but inside you. The anger burns through, the tears dry up, and what's left is this dangerous kind of stillness. That's where I was. I wasn't throwing accusations anymore. I wasn't demanding answers. I was done giving him the satisfaction of seeing me spin out. Instead, I went quiet and started looking. It began small. Late one night, while Daniel was asleep beside me, I scrolled through our shared phone bill. Line after line of late-night calls to the same number. Always after 10 p.m. Always when he was working late. I didn't recognize the number, but I didn't need to. I knew the pattern. Next came the shared Google Calendar. He never used it much, but when he did, it was to mark work trips, conferences, client dinners. I went back months. Little entries popped up like breadcrumbs. Manchester, Fry to Sun, Leeds, overnight, Bristol, client meet. At the time, I'd smiled and kissed him goodbye, believing he was out there grinding for us, building our future. Now, each line felt like a knife. The final piece came from the one place I didn't think he'd be careless, his cloud backup. He never logged out on his laptop. And there they were, albums automatically synced from his phone. In one folder, a string of hotel room selfies. Not of him, but the view from the window, the food, the wine glasses. 2 glasses. Always 2. My stomach nodded as I cross-checked the timestamps with his work trips. They lined up perfectly. And then, the gut punch. One booking, a weekend he swore was a corporate seminar in Bristol, matched the exact city where she lived. The same woman I'd caught him cheating with months earlier. The one we'd supposedly left behind. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some unresolved one-off. This was a continuation. He didn't stop seeing her after I forgave him. He just got better at hiding it. I sat there in the glow of the laptop, the clock ticking past 2 a.m., and felt this icy clarity settle over me. Forgiving him hadn't put me back in the position of the woman he wanted most. It had made me the woman who didn't ask too many questions, the woman who kept the peace while he kept his options. I realized then, I wasn't the second chance. I was the convenient one. When you've been lied to long enough, there's a point where the shame starts to lift because you realize the only way to get the truth is to go straight to the source. I didn't message her in anger. I didn't write paragraphs dripping in accusation. I sent 5 words. "We need to talk. Please." I expected silence, maybe a block. Instead, 10 minutes later, she replied, "When and where?" We agreed on a small cafe halfway between our homes, neutral ground. I spent the next 24 hours rehearsing what I'd say. A careful balance between demanding answers and keeping my dignity. But when I walked in and saw her, the first thing I noticed wasn't her beauty, or the fact that she looked exactly like I remembered from her social media. It was the confusion in her eyes. She didn't look like someone gearing up for a fight. She looked like someone bracing for impact. We ordered coffee. The silence between us was taut, but it wasn't hostile. More like 2 people about to swap pieces of the same puzzle. Finally, she spoke. "I have to be honest. I thought you 2 were done." That's what he told me. The words hit me like a dull thud. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "Done? As in, completely over?" She nodded. "He said you were just cohabiting for practical reasons, that you were moving out, that you were the one who couldn't let go." That last line made my skin crawl, not because it was true, but because it was almost identical to the way he'd described her to me a year ago. Clingy, desperate, unwilling to move on. We started comparing timelines, and that's when the real nausea kicked in. Her first date with him, a week after he'd promised me he was done with her. Her first weekend away. The same weekend he told me he was visiting a sick relative. She told me about the gifts, the trips, the lazy Sundays in bed watching movies, all happening in the same months he was rebuilding with me. It was a sick mirror image of my own life. 2 relationships running parallel, never intersecting, until now. Then came the second twist, the one that made everything snap into place. She leaned forward, her voice dropping low, like she almost didn't want to say it out loud. He told me he was deciding between us. My stomach turned. Deciding? She nodded, her expression pained. He said he cared about both of us, but that he needed time to see who he could build a future with. I didn't realize I was part of some competition. The word echoed in my head. Competition. While I was pouring my energy into repairing what I thought was a broken but salvageable relationship, he was treating our lives like 2 job offers he couldn't quite choose between. And here's the part that gutted me the most. She didn't say it with malice. She wasn't gloating. She looked just as betrayed as I felt. Because she had been betrayed. We sat there in a strange solidarity. 2 women who'd been told completely different stories, each crafted to make the other disappear. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was logistical, strategic. He had woven a reality for each of us that only worked as long as we never compared notes. But now the notes were spread across the table. Timelines, receipts, memories. And the truth was impossible to unsee. I wasn't the second chance. I wasn't the main choice. I was the backup plan. I didn't ask him to meet me at home. I wanted him on my turf, not his. My walls, my table, my rules. When he walked in, he had that half smile he used whenever he thought he could charm his way out of trouble. But I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't ask how his day was. I slid my phone across the table and hit play. It was a recording from the cafe. Not audio, just the image of me and Chloe talking, leaning in, comparing dates, nodding at the overlap like 2 lawyers building a case. His jaw tightened. He didn't reach for the phone, didn't even glance down. "What is this supposed to prove?" he asked, voice flat. I kept my tone calm. "That you've been running 2 relationships at the same time, that you lied to both of us, that every guy's weekend was a city break with her." He shifted in his seat, leaning back, crossing his arms. The body language of a man who thinks deflection is still an option. "You have no idea what you're talking about. She's manipulating you." I reached into my bag and laid down the printouts. Hotel bookings, synced calendar entries, photo timestamps, all cross-referenced with messages I'd pulled from his cloud backup. There was no room left for doubt. "That's your name on the receipts," I said quietly. "That's your face in her bed. And these," I tapped the messages, "are your words. I love you too. I'll tell her soon." For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then the smile cracked. The shoulders dropped. The act dissolved. "I didn't know what I wanted," he said finally, like it was some kind of confession. Like that was the magic line that would make me understand. I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. "You had years to know, and while you were deciding, you let me believe I was it. You let her believe she was it. We were both placeholders in your indecision." He started to say something, but I cut him off. "You can leave now." For a second, I thought he'd argue. Instead, he stood up slowly, stuffing his hands into his jacket pockets. He took a step toward the door, then paused, the way someone does when they're about to drop something heavy and walk away. "There's something else," he said over his shoulder. I didn't want to know. My body knew before my mind did that whatever was coming would shift the ground again. "Chloe's pregnant." The words landed like they'd been thrown, hard and fast. I froze. Every noise in the room, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, seemed to vanish. He didn't say, "We're having a baby." He didn't say, "I'm going to be a father." Just "Chloe's pregnant," like it was a headline in a paper I'd never agreed to read. My mouth was dry. My brain was already calculating timelines without my permission. "How long have you known?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough to confirm the answer before it came out. "A few weeks." A few weeks. Which meant every dinner, every kiss, every moment where I thought maybe we could rebuild. He was already holding this secret. And then came the part that turned my stomach. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. What was going to happen? As if the pregnancy was just another factor in his decision-making matrix. In that moment, I understood the full scope of it. I had been in a competition I didn't sign up for, and the prize wasn't love. It was him. And now, even his truth came with consequences I never asked for. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stepped aside, opened the door, and let him walk out. I didn't post about it. I didn't text his friends or send screenshots to his family. I didn't need to scorch the earth. I just needed to remove myself from it. The day after he told me about Chloe, I packed a suitcase. Not because I was running, but because I was reclaiming space that was mine. I left the coffee mugs we bought together, the throw blanket we used on movie nights, even the framed photo from our first holiday. I didn't want mementos. I wanted distance. I moved into a small flat across town. It wasn't perfect. The pipes rattled, the walls were thin, but it was quiet, and it was mine. No shared calendars, no questions about where I was, no one else's phone lighting up in the middle of the night. Therapy became my anchor. Week after week, I peeled back the layers, not just of him, but of me. The me who thought forgiveness could save a relationship. The me who thought loyalty meant staying even when it hurt. The me who confused hope with proof. And I remembered who I was before Daniel, before my messy divorce, before the ex who chipped away at my confidence until I was grateful for the bare minimum. I used to believe I could fix people, that if I just loved hard enough, patiently enough, they'd rise to meet me. But all that ever did was make me a rehab center for men who had no intention of changing. Daniel wasn't an exception. He was the pattern I hadn't broken yet. It took losing him twice to finally see it. Now, I don't chase explanations. I don't argue with lies. If something feels off, I trust it. I'm not waiting for proof, for receipts, for a third-party witness to tell me I'm right. My peace is worth more than a confession. I didn't win him back, and I'm glad I didn't, because what I got instead was myself, the version who doesn't need a man's clarity to have her own. And here's the thing no one tells you. If he comes back, it's not always because he's changed. Sometimes it's just because she said no. I wasn't paranoid. I was patient. And it cost me twice. I thought I was giving us a second chance. But really, I was giving him time to choose. And the moment I realized I was just the backup plan, I stopped being part of the game. He lost both women. I lost the illusion. And I'm never letting anyone audition for a part in my life they have no intention of keeping.